Well, welcome everyone to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM News Talk Radio. I have the privilege every week, every day, Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock to bring you interesting people. And I got to tell you, one of the most interesting people that I've met in my time in Mississauga. As some of you may know, I was president of the Mississauga Arts Council, and I had the pleasure of giving this young lady the award, a Marty Award, for the top performing person that year. And she deserves a lot more awards than what the Mississauga Arts Council ever gave her, but it was nice that the Mississauga Arts Council could give her an award. And this is Susanne Howe. How, am I pronounced it right?
Perfect.
Susanne Howe, who is a violinist, classical violinist. She grew up in Mississauga. She trained in Mississauga, but then she ended up going to, what was it, Juilliard in Manhattan, and became a top performer there, and has now performed around the world and travels around the world. And she has a fascinating story that maybe she'll tell us a little bit about, where her father was a conductor in China, in Shanghai, I think it was, and left and came to Canada and trained her and practiced her nonstop. So she ended up becoming such an incredible violinist. And she was very proud a couple of years to go back to China and play one of his favorite, if not the favorite pieces that he's ever done. Anyway, Susanne Howe, welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. It's an honor to be. An honor to be on your radio, and it's a pleasure to be back in Mississauga.
So tell me, you're here in social isolation, or in whatever we call it, spatial social distancing, physical distancing, with your parents who are Mississauga residents. Must be tough for you to not be performing, not traveling around the world.
It is. It is. It feels a little bit like the first vacation I've had in about 20 years. It's amazing because I think even while I was a student at Juilliard, I was moving nonstop. I was making 2 transatlantic flights per month. And I mean, at the moment, everything is grounded and we just don't move anymore. And it feels honestly quite nice to be able to see winter turn to spring here in Canada, although we had a little bit of a snowfall, but it melted, of course, within an hour. And so for me, I'm relishing in this staycation.
Excellent. So let's update us, please. So the last I heard of you, we gave you the Marty, and you performed a couple of wonderful concerts here in Toronto for a big Chinese New Year banquet, and then you embarked on a worldwide tour. Where did the worldwide tour take you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we started in London. I was performing and recording with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and I have since returned back to London to perform with the Royal Philharmonic again. So a couple of trips to London, and with the Royal Philharmonic, we went to Taiwan and China on a 2-week tour, and we made a recording of the Butterfly Lovers Concerto, the Saint-Saëns introduction in Rondo Capriccioso, and also 2 Chinese works, one written by Fritz Kreisler, the tambourine chinois, and another work by Yang Baozi, which is a Chinese composer. So it was really a bridge of East and West culture in musical form. And each piece in the CD was actually inspired by an earlier composition that was on the CD. So it's really quite, it was an honor to be able to record this as you mentioned, this incredibly celebrated violin concerto, a very unique piece that my father was in fact asked to play and asked to make the first recording, but we were already on our way to Canada, immigrating to Canada at the time, so he was unable to make that first recording, and so now the world has to suffer with mine recording of this piece.
And I remember you telling me a little bit about the piece. It's about 2 lovers that don't end up sort of unrequited love, I guess would be the right description of it, correct?
Yes, exactly. It is the Chinese version of Romeo and Juliet, and in fact, it came over 1,000 years before the Shakespearean and Italian and Arthur Brooks versions of the Romeo and Juliet as well. It was written in the Jing Dynasty, and at that time, girls were not permitted to go to school. much like everybody right now. Nobody's going to school. And our main lead, who is written as the violin, she begs and begs her father to allow her to go to school. And finally, she goes with her hair hidden under her hat, and off she goes. And yeah, I find this particularly interesting to talk about now, because so many of those themes are still ever present today. We talk about education, we talk about femininity, masculinity, we talk about gender equality differences, we talk about finding oneself, and in the finding oneself discovery category it's even more, I feel, relevant today as we're completely isolated. I'm reminded about how people get to know each other,
Well,
and
how people get to know themselves. I think that when you're quarantined and socially isolated, spending a lot more time with yourself. Number
exactly.
one, it's a pleasure to reach out and reacquaint with favorite people in the world like yourself. But then also, it's helpful to spend some time alone and think about who you are and what you're all about.
Right. And also, I appreciate the refocus on health,
Yeah.
because we are never more aware of our health than when we're sick or when people around us are sick. We always forget about it. Like every time I remember, every single time in my entire life I ever had a cold, I'd be like, I am really going to appreciate it when I'm healthy. And then when I'm healthy, I forget.
Yeah.
And this is the best reminder that we should really cherish our health, to respect and take care of ourselves and our loved ones.
No
And
question. And our loved ones. And I know you have elderly parents. My mom lives on her own, 88 years old, and we are not going to go see her. We're making a point of distancing, but we're reaching out on a fairly regular basis. And the whole family has got together to sort of try a little harder than we would normally try to make sure, because she is a social animal and loves her bridge and loves her church and loves her coffee parties, and she's missing all that. And so I think it's important for all of us to reach out to people that are socially isolated, and it really reminds me of how important her health is as well as my own health.
right. And do you find that the value of real face-to-face time will increase one day?
I think so. We're chatting on Zoom, and we were joking earlier about how you interact with people. I find that once you've had a face-to-face meeting with someone, you can certainly keep up via text or keep up via email or keep up versus via telephone. But actually seeing someone and seeing the facial interaction, the physical body movements, the way that people respond is so critically important, and you miss that when you've got text. I did a fascinating interview with a lady who ran a video company, and she said that she thought today video was 15% of internet traffic, but in the future it would be 85% of video traffic,
Mm-hmm.
because emails are becoming sort of like the faxes of today. And faxes were the medium that we used a decade ago, but email took over, and she thought that emails would go the way of the fax machine, and that we would. And one of her examples was, how many times do you get a text with an emoticon in it? The reason why is just the text by itself doesn't convey emotion, and so therefore people add an emoticon to add emotion, and even that, obviously texts aren't satisfactory, and so therefore videos are where we're going, and so therefore people are using videos to send out snippets of their performance, which I'm hoping that you might do for us later on today, or for resumes. People are sending out video resumes, or people are posting videos. I interviewed the other day a person that was doing online dating, and she was talking about how people are using videos for dating. And so I think people are using video a lot more. This video CEO, she quoted that 95% of French teenagers are on something called TikTok. I've never even heard about TikTok until that time. And what it is just a video sharing type service for teenagers. Well, for everybody, but teenagers who use it. Anyway, we're going to take a break and come back more with Susanne Howe, a fantastic classic violinist, in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, good evening and welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting with Susanne Howe, a wonderful classical violinist who, as I mentioned, I had the pleasure of giving a Marty Award to when I was president of the Mississauga Arts Council, because she, more than almost anyone I know, deserved it as a top performing artist. She trained at Juilliard. She's traveled around the world, as we've heard, and she's got her start here in Mississauga. And Susanne, I think there's an interesting story that you told me once about you've got small hands or something like this, and your father had to do something such that you could actually play the violin. Tell us about that if you could.
Yeah, I wish everybody could see my hands right now. My pinky finger doesn't cross the knuckle line, that first knuckle line of my third finger. And I can't remember the exact measurement of my pinky, but it is the shortest pinky finger. My hands are the smallest hands of any professional violinist in the world. I've compared even in Japan and China and Korea, everywhere, the smallest hands that exist. And if I had grown up in China, Shanghai Conservatory would not have accepted me to study violin because they consider it a disability to have
such small hands.
But my father being a violinist, my mother being a violinist, and me having just this love for the violin, he said, okay, we'll do it anyway. And he trained me especially to get around on this instrument. And my I consider myself very fortunate in my lifetime, because if my parents didn't believe in me, if they didn't encourage me and teach me and practice with me every day, I would never be playing this instrument. There would be no chance. And I have long thought that it's something that I'd like to share with the world. So this year, in fact, if we can actually get out the door ever again. This year, we are starting to film a series called Paganini for Little Hands. And Paganini is considered the most challenging pieces ever written for the violin. It is the Bible of violin technique. And it is what my father used to train my hands starting at age 9.5, because he knew that without these incredibly challenging etudes at a very young age, I would never be able to actually get around on the instrument, let alone do what I'm doing today. So he's trained me in very specific ways to optimize energy flow, to optimize position, posture, and movement. And he practiced with me every minute of my entire life, from when I started 3-4 years old until I was 12 and went to New York and studied with Dorothy DeLay. So
with you every minute of your life.
Every minute.
You must have been a pretty tough taskmaster.
He was pretty tough. He said, I remember he said to me, I had 2 tough jobs, the job of a father and the job of a teacher. And he said, as a father, I had the responsibility to give you an education and encourage you to do what you love. And as your teacher, I have the responsibility to be strict. And he said, so I had to do all of those things, and it's not easy to balance. And thankfully, he was incredibly intelligent about how he had my word, my promise of work and work ethic. And I never questioned a minute, but he also stayed with me. So I was never alone. And I find that particularly relevant today, as we are all alone in isolation. And what does that mean? I think that there are many things that we accomplish when we have the energy of somebody else around, better than if we were alone. And still, I mean, I am practicing in isolation practically all the rest of my life. I mean, my practice rooms and in Juilliard, in my hotel rooms, and even in trains, planes, and automobiles, and whatever. I practiced always alone thereafter. But those early years, to have somebody there monitoring and encouraging and giving you that sense of belief that even if it fails 10,000 times, on that 10,001st time, it will work. That's something that I don't think.
You play something 10,000 times?
I'm pretty sure that we play every piece of music at least 10,000 times before we go on stage. And I do know that we practice 10,000 hours. So within those 10,000 hours before playing, I mean, yeah, I remember an exercise that he took me through once, and it was with the Paganini, where uh, this was this only happened once, but I couldn't get this one phrase, and I just told him it was impossible, and he said it's not impossible, and he said, look, just play it through 10 times perfectly without any faults, and we'll go have dinner because mom, finished dinner and we're both hungry. I said, okay, all right, 10 times. Doesn't take very long, probably less than a minute. And he said, but there's a catch. If you mess up once, we're going to add 3 times. I said, okay. I wasn't, I think I was 9, 10 years old at the time, maybe younger. Didn't quite click in what this meant. So I went from 10 times, 9 times, 8 times, up to 11, back down to 10, up to 13, back down to 12, up to 15, up to 18, up to 21. And you can see where this goes. So after 100, I started crying. And he said, crying's not going to help. Keep going. He said, I'm going to stay here with you. Nobody's eating. Nobody's doing anything. Mom will reheat dinner. Don't worry. We're going to get through this. That number went up to 217.
Oh, my God.
It was midnight before I got through. But I'll tell you, those last 100 times,
217 times.
That one phrase that lasts about maybe 4 seconds.
You've got to play that phrase for us.
Oh, I can't. Out of the blue. It only lasts like 4 seconds.
Only 10 times.
Okay, all right. I mean, I suppose the theory is once you've played it like that many times, it should come out no matter what. All right, let me see. Sorry?
What a great story.
That's it.
Did you do it right?
Yeah, actually. That wasn't bad. It was just one phrase like that, but they're running thirds.
What are running thirds?
Yeah, and there are shifts and everything that happen in between, and double stops very, very quickly, spiccato.
Fantastic. And then you went to New York when you were 12?
Yeah. My parents drove me overnight, 24-hour driving back and forth. We would leave at about 3:00 in the morning to arrive in New York around 11, 12. Night driving was a little bit quicker. I think we got a speeding ticket every single trip. And then I would stay and have my very, very long lesson, and we would return about 2 p.m., 3 p.m. and arrive around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, stop for dinner somewhere.
And sorry, this was a lesson with?
Dorothy DeLay in New York. And we went until I was 18 and went to Juilliard.
And how often would you go to New York?
Every 3 to 4 weeks.
Every 3 to 4 weeks. And you're still training with your father, obviously.
Yeah, in between, yeah.
And she's obviously a well-known teacher?
Yes, she's an incredible violin pedagogue, and she has taught every single famous violinist in the entire world, starting from Itzhak Perlman, Josh Bell, down to little old me. And
then is Juilliard next?
Juilliard, you mean?
In your chronology, after this?
Yes, and then when I was 18, I went to Juilliard. I did all my degrees there, bachelor's, master's, and the performance doctorate called artist diploma.
Now, some of these, movies or shows that depict Juilliard as a pretty tough place. Was it a pretty tough place?
Well, I wasn't there very often because I was practicing all the time in my first year. In the second year, I won my competition, and I was going to Europe twice a month, so I wasn't there a lot. But I have to say that I didn't really enjoy practicing on the practice floor because it really did feel like you were on a farm with musicians, and everybody was practicing their concerto, and it was hyper competitive, and it is a not as supportive of an environment, and I suppose it pushes you to excel, but there's some aspects that at least at the time, I know they're aware of that, and they're working on creating that nurturing environment more so now.
Right.
But at the time, there really wasn't so much helping. I remember I had a friend who was struggling with a passage, and I because of my teeny tiny hands, showed him how I got around those kind of phrases, and I remember he looked at me and he was like, "Why are you telling me this?" And I was like, "Well, because you were having trouble with it, and this helps, right?" He was like, "Yeah, but nobody helps. What if you help everybody? They're going to be better than you."
Oh, God.
And I remember thinking, what an odd way. If somebody needs help, you help. That was just my logic. There's no other way. And I suppose there's a lot of naivety to that, but in fact, no. And today, that's what I want to do, is to help. And that's what this program is about, is to share all of these secrets, all of these trade secrets that will help enable anybody to tackle these incredibly challenging pieces. Because the next generation, if they can get through this, they'll be much, much better, and we'll all be better off.
Do you have another piece that you would consider playing for us, please?
Oh, I thought I'd try to conclude at least a little bit the Beethoven Spring Sonata and go to the third movement, since the the fourth movement, since we started with the first movement incomplete. So maybe we can do an incomplete phrase or two from the fourth movement.
That would be awesome.
Let's see if I can.
Susanne Howe again, playing from her living room in Mississauga in social isolation during COVID-19.
Right.
Fantastic.
Concert live from the living room, and you are on my piano. Oh, it always sounds so different without piano. I mean, as I started suggesting playing a piece like this, I always imagine the entire ensemble playing it, and it is different. It's so different playing it alone. But it is how I practice. It's just that when I'm practicing, I'm repeating things 217 times, and nobody wants to hear that. So.
Well, we'll have to if this self-isolation goes on much longer, we'll have to do another show and bring in a pianist by Zoom.
Yeah, just see if we can do that. I thought it would start. I thought if people get bored enough, if we get, I might start, sharing some of my work process, because I am preparing the Beethoven Violin Concerto for this season, as well as the Bruch Scottish Fantasy.
The what Scottish Fantasy?
Bruch Scottish Fantasy.
What's that?
Bruch, I'm actually playing in Hamilton in October, I believe, and the Beethoven is opening the season in Poland. So
well, I'd love to go to Hamilton. I doubt I'll go to Poland to see you.
Well, we'll see if I get to Poland.
When are you playing in Poland?
Fingers crossed. In Krakow.
When?
Krakow. It's in September.
Oh, you should. We should be okay by then, I hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I hope.
So it must be nice coming back to Mississauga to have some time to rehearse and to spend with your parents.
It really is. I mean, I must say that, I wasn't here last year, 2019. I think I wasn't here practically at all. I had maybe less than a week here all last year. So I was really looking forward to seeing everybody, the whole family, friends, and all kinds of social get-togethers scheduled, and everything has been canceled, of course. And so a year of waiting, what's another few weeks, maybe months.
Well, it's great to have you back in Mississauga. We're going to take another break and come back with some concluding comments with Susanne Howe in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, we're back with Susanne Howe, an incredible classical violinist. And you've told us, Susanne, about your story, about your father, 10,000 practices and 217 perfectly done right. You told us about driving to New York. You've told us about Juilliard. You've told us about traveling the world and performing in beautiful concert halls. If someone is listening tonight and has a dream of being something like you, what suggestions have you got?
Patience. Have a lot of patience. I think that we are often not patient or kind enough to ourselves. And I think that what I had growing up with my father practicing with me was this incredible belief, and somebody who just sat there and patiently took me through the process, because nothing ever comes easy, especially on instruments. And I think that for the most part, many things that are worthwhile do not come easily. But if we
Many things that are worthwhile do not come easily.
No. Anything that's worthwhile does not come easily. And if it does come easily, it doesn't always last. I do think that
applicable to a lot of things in life.
Right. I believe that very strongly. And I think that the other thing is that if there's something that anybody really wants to do, they should do it no matter what anybody says. If they really have a love and a passion for something, even if that genre or kind of music or kind of creation or kind of art doesn't exist yet, they should just create it. And nobody can stop them. And I think that that comes with incredible, incredible passion, that we don't do it because we might get paid, because we might be good at it, because there's so many because of this, of that, of whatever. I think if somebody's truly, truly passionate about doing something, they'll do it no matter what. They'll
not
just
because of money, but because they're passionate about it.
Right. And I think that when they're truly passionate about it, that kind of passion is infectious, and the world will respond.
So be patient, be kind to yourself. If you're passionate about something, do it. What else?
And then I think carrying those through every single step along the way. I mean, that's applicable to so much of that journey. Because
what do you mean, hard work?
Right. For instance, I mean, patience also within opportunities, because many people are looking for quick opportunities. They want, they have a piece ready and they want it to come right away. Oh, piece is ready, I want to perform it. Well, it doesn't always come right away, and good things are worth waiting for. And I can certainly say that going through the years that I did in my career, I made some extremely difficult choices, some unconventional choices, and choices that others would have considered
Give me an example.
Completely career debilitating, like turning down opportunities. But I was given incredible opportunities to play music that I didn't love. And I said, I'm not the best advocate for this music. If I'm not passionate about it, I'm not going to be the best medium for it to come through. And yet that would have been a huge opportunity for me to step up and play. But I think that would have diminished the purity of my love and passion for my instrument, and second, it would have diluted the purpose of music for me. It was not for the opportunity. I play it because I love it.
So what's next for Susanne Howe? What's next for you? You talked about you're going to release a CD this year. What else? Anything else?
We're releasing actually two videos this year. One is in to celebrate Beethoven's 250th birthday. Sorry, and that's going to be the Beethoven violin concerto with the London Symphony Orchestra, plus the documentary that was filmed along with it. And the second is The Butterfly Lovers, which was a live capture of the Beijing performance, the one that we talked about it.
Yep.
And that will also be released this year. Filming the series, Paganini for Little Hands, is coming up, and that's going to be a huge production. And I think a long production period as well, because we have a lot to do. And then concerts. And I'm also starting, and this is not yet ready to be announced really to public, but I'm starting some one-on-one workshops with artists that I've already worked with in the past. So by invitation only at the moment, I'm started to mentor some young artists, especially those who I feel have a very unique offering to the world, those who are trying to do something that has never been done before and don't really know how to do that. Choosing unconventional paths takes incredible support and an ecosystem of people that believe in them and who can help introduce them to the right people at the right time. And that's an ecosystem that is not always available to people, and sometimes that will never come. So if I can help make some connections, if I can help give that sense of validity and support and belief in these young writers that are venturing to do something brave and courageous with their lives, then that certainly I feel is a very worthwhile cause. And so that's actually starting this, not going to announce the date now that now that we're currently in this situation in the world, but it's certainly also something that is launching this year.
Wonderful. And if people want to check out your music, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
I am on virtually everything. So starting from Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, everywhere, and Facebook page and Instagram and Twitter, everything under Susanne Howe, and each has Susanne Howe.
Z?
Susanne, sorry?
Susanne with a Z?
Susanne with an S.
An S, not a Z.
But even if you spell it wrong, it'll come up.
And the spelling of your last name?
Howe, H-O-U. So Susanne.
Susanne Howe, H-O-U. Excellent. And assuming that we're back to normal by the fall, your next performance in Southern Ontario is in Hamilton?
My next performance here in Canada is in Hamilton, indeed. Yeah, it's in October. With the Hamilton Philharmonic, I believe, in Hamilton Place.
And hopefully lots of our listeners will be there, because Susanne Howe is someone who deserves to be heard, because she is just a spectacular talent and one of the nicest people that I've had the pleasure of meeting in the artistic community, whether in Mississauga or anywhere in the world. So Susanne, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour.
Thank you, Brian. And it's so wonderful that you're reaching out to everybody. And thank you for also bringing an incredible community of people on your radio. It's I've enjoyed listening to the broadcasts, and it's certainly welcome and needed.
We'll do another one with a pianist sometime.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Good night, everybody. Susanne Howe. Check her out on Spotify or Apple Music, or with the Hamilton Philharmonica in Hamilton in October. Good night, everybody.